see there, I've just popped the eyes in. Just literally, we'll use polychromers just to pop the eyes in. I'm going to go back over them later on. You can look at the other eye tutorials I've got to follow that in more detail. Just follows the same principles. They're quite small. I'll show you just how small they are compared to the end of a pencil. There's a pencil, so they are quite small. There's my little finger there as well. So if you follow something like the wolf eye tutorial, that's quite good. On this dog though, one eye is amber gold and the other eye is baby blue. So I've just put a hint of the blue in there. You can't see a lot. If I just bring across the reference photo a little bit, you can't see a lot of that eye over there. So I've just literally popped a hint of it there, so I've got it there. And again, if I zoom in as well on this with the reference, it's sort of a decent size reference, but as you see, as soon as I zoom in, it pixelates. So I've sort of followed the coloration that I can see in there, but detail's not that great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start just colour blocking it in, and I've gone for using the Watercolour Pencil Underpainting. So I've got a huge selection here. I'm going to be using lots of colours. This is a commission rather than a tutorial. So I'm going to be using, sort of like all my browns, my Mortons, my ochres, my blues, some of the beigey ochres as well, some of the warm greys. Little touch, maybe a black, a couple of dark places, but I'm going to be trying to use my dark indigo and my Kaput Mortem violet for the darkest areas where possible, and also pulling in walnut brown. So those are going to be my three darks. So I'm going to work on this and I'll video it, but I'm going to be speeding it up so you can just literally see me laying down the pigment. Again, this isn't like a formal tutorial, but it's just so you can watch how I work on this commission piece. Okay, so we'll be speeding up now. Welcome back to this tutorial video. This is this is just a part of a series of videos that form sort of like an informal overall tutorial. This is a portrait commission, but I've got permission to actually film the whole making of the piece. So I've just broken it down into stages. There is a little tutorial video out showing how to do the pan pastel background. That's going to go out onto my Patreon and onto YouTube. The dog itself will mainly go out just onto Patreon, but again, not as a formal tutorial, just literally to show how I created it. But this one, again, this part of it is where I'm going to add water. This is watercolour pencils. This is Faber-Castell Albrecht watercolour pencils, and I am now about to go in and add the water. I'm just going to get my glassine paper in place, and I've also got some pan pastel on here as well, so I'm actually going to be wetting the pan pastel as well. So I'm going to start literally up the top here, and I'm going to just do this ear, and then I'll do this section. I will do the white later on. I just want to get all the colour done first and work my way down in sections. So I'm using a water brush pen here, which again, piece of tissue to hand, glassine paper. You should really lay your piece flat here, horizontal, so there's no risk of it running. Mine is at an angle, okay. I'm used to doing this process, but if you're not used to it, do lay your piece down. I'll lay my piece down flat to dry, but just for the sake of that, I need to be able to film the piece. I've got it raised at an angle so that the camera can film it. So let's get going. So you just squeeze out some water onto your tissue. Make sure your nib is fully loaded, and then we're going to just start to come in. And you don't want to be moving the paint around. All I want to do is literally add water to activate this, all that pencil. I took ages, putting all this pencil down in place. So all I want to do is just go in and activate all of that pencil. So as you can see, all I'm doing is just squeezing the water through, coming down here and dissolving. It's got like a binder, it's a bit like a wax emulsifier, so a soluble binder for the pigment of this one. Let me just adjust the camera so you can see what I do down this bottom end. And all you're doing with the water is you're going in and dissolving that pigment, and also with the paper, using pastel matte paper. So if you think of your paper as being like it's got mountains and valleys, the tooth is the raised part. The tooth is what grips your pigment. Just interrupt what I'm saying out. I'm going to come in here and just do the white as I work, because I want it to blend up into that colour part that I've just done. So this is pan pastel that I'm wetting here, and also there is an underlying area of, I've done watercolour pencil underneath the pan pastel as well, so the two will mix together. So again, if you think of it as mountains and valleys, and adding the water, we're dissolving that wax, or we're dissolving the binder, and we're also getting that our pigment to sink down into the tooth of our paper, filling some of those valleys, so that it gives us a lovely foundation then when we come to adding our dry layers of pencil. Because remember, this is just one part of the process. This is just one layer really. We're going to be adding tons of layers of light pencil over the top. I will be adding pan pastel as well over this white area, partly to make it lovely and bright and white, but also because I love the soft effect that the pan pastel is going to give me on this fur. It's perfect for this type of fur. So you can see there just how quickly I've worked all of that. Just adding water. I'm trying to clean off, I'm trying not to drag any of the brown or the reds out into the white. I'm going to leave it there because I want to be able to reach up over. I don't want to be getting my glassine paper wet, so let me just adjust the camera again. Let's go back up to the top. Okay, so squeeze my water out. Let's come in here to this ear. I'm just going to sweep down over this ear, just as quick as that. Don't want to be moving all of that pigment around. All we're doing, remember, is just dissolving that binder. Enough water to sink it down. Don't be hesitant of not putting enough water down, otherwise you'll just get it grainy looking and the pigment will still sit on the surface and you'll be like, oh, that looks really rough and grainy, and it's like because you haven't put enough water down for it to sink down into those valleys, remember? So you should see this now on screen starting to, trying to look at my next section. I'm going to come all the way over here, which might seem a little bit strange, but I want to just bring this all the way up over the top before I come back down here. And I've got a big droplet of water there that's liable to run, so I'm going to lift that off before it gets the chance to run. And you'll find that when you add your water, your light colour pencils, so your whites, your greys, they tend to disappear. So you can go back in whilst it's damp, which I will show you in a little bit if I need to. Up here you see it's gone really pale, but this here area now, as I add the water, this is all going to come up lovely and vivid now. But this area here where I've got the lights, that will probably sink and vanish quite a bit. It's just one of those things. I do try and compensate by putting down a lot of pigment in those areas, knowing that when I add the water it's probably going to vanish. But you can only compensate so much. So don't worry if that does happen. It's perfectly normal. Whereas the darker colours and your mid-tones come out super vivid, and that's why I say less is more. For those of you that will watch the initial laying down of the pigment, less is more there. So let me just come along here, do this edge of the rough. Okay, squeeze through. See, all I'm doing, just sweeping water over this pigment. But you can just see those colours coming to life now on the screen. A little bit too much water on there. Just keeping an eye out for anywhere that potentially could run, because I have added a tiny bit too much water in a couple of areas. Just in around that mouth area. And whilst I'm here, I'm just going to come in around the nose. I'll do the actual nose itself in a second. I'll just let that dry a tiny little bit. Okay, so back up here. Can you see along this top edge here? See, I'm not after precision, I'm just literally dissolving dissolving all of that binder. Okay, cool. So I need to come in and do that white area. So let me finish the white area along the bottom first of all. Back down with the camera. Let's finish, come across here, that's where we came to, so let me just carry on along there. Here it's quite chalky because obviously this is where I've got pan pastel down as well. So it is clogging my brush up quite quickly along there. But you do get a feel for this. I mean, it takes a bit of practice, a bit of confidence. I've been doing this for years, so obviously, you know, I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen when I add, build up those dry layers. I know which ones to lay down and in what order, and what effect is gonna happen when I then add water to it. But again, it all comes from practice. If you've worked in other mediums using paints, that might help you. But again, you're also getting used to working on the pastel mat, application using the pencils. It's all a learning curve. Okay, so I'm just coming in here now. If you'll see, I'm just going to wiggle. I just want to blend all of this area. I've got a few little dots of colour there as well, marking the follicles around the muzzle. The follicles are the whiskers. You see I'm kind of going in the direction of the fur and following the shapes. Now I don't want to drag that around, so we'll just damp that, and then let me just squeeze out, clean off my brush, and go in with fresh water up here. But be careful because there is going to be some runs. Let me just lift those off. That's it. Going quiet here because I'm just concentrating on as I come down along that line. Let me just lift out that tiny bit there and that layers. That's it. Okay, just making sure you can see where I am. Just literally all I'm doing is just wetting the rest of that pan pastel down through there. I'm just going to come over the edge where that meets and just with a relatively dryish brush just blend that through. And here earlier on we just added a tiny bit too much water in there, but that is fine. Now I think all that's left to do is the area of the nose itself, so let me just come in here. We did that outer edge. Dry off my brush. Again, remember this is just an underpainting. This doesn't need to be perfect, but as long as you've got most of the colour and a lovely tonal value down, it's going to really help them with your next layers. I'm pretty happy with how this has come out, to be honest. Looks quite rough and ready. Now, I'm just going to come into a couple of these little white areas. It's gone super grainy. Remember I said about it'll just go a little bit wishy-washy and go really grainy. It has. And along here, it's all completely gone. Here as well, you can see where all the light colours are really grainy. I'm just adding a touch more water to see if it will just help with that. If it doesn't, I can come back in with my pencils. It doesn't matter. This is just, if you get a chance to do this before your piece dries, it's a bonus. If you don't, it just means you've got a little bit more to do on the next layers. There we go. So what I'm going to do quickly is grab, as you said, grab my white, and I haven't got it sharpened, just going to sharpen it up super quickly. There we go. I'll sharpen it up a tiny bit too much, so I'm going to just break the nib off. There we go. Now I have to be careful about putting my glassine down, so I'm going to just try and rest in over the top. Where's a good way of showing you this? If I bring the camera back up, I am rushing because I say you only get one chance at this before it dries. Luckily it's winter, so it's not too hot in here, so it's not going to dry too much or too quickly. So at this point you can come in, you really want a bit blunter pencil than I've got there. I've just took the nib off. And all you do is you just rest your nib on the paper, give it a wiggle, and it'll start to release pure pigment. It'll start to grab pure pigment from your pencil, so where you've got grainy and where that white or those lighter colours have vanished, just go in there, wiggle your pencil on that area, no pressure. See, look, I'm holding it right on the end, there's no pressure. I'm allowing the pigment and the dampness of the paper to do this for me. You can do this as well if you lose any of your dark areas and you want to make your darks. Say this is a black dog, say you lose some of the blacks, you add water and it goes quite pale because you haven't put enough pigment down on your application process. Just come in here now. This is when you can come in with your darker pencils or your mid-tones, any of them really, and just add them back in. And this just means, if I can get these in here now, it's a little bit less work again on those next layers. And this is releasing lovely. See how lovely that has now gone. It's gone from being all rough and quite wishy-washy to now it's softened up and allowed me to get that application in. I'm going to do exactly the same thing here, and you want to be flicking your eyes backwards and forwards to the reference as well, just to make sure I get some of this back in. It just vanished when I added the water. Like I say, that is completely normal. In fact, I could have grabbed my museum aquarelle to this bit, but I've got my Albrecht Dürer, so we'll stick with it for now. So, wherever... If this was, whilst I was doing this, this was just cutting through, it would mean that the paper was too wet still. This is actually perfect at the moment. So I'm going to try and work this area up here, and it will give me, like I say, a lovely soft effect that matches the fur as well. It'll just save me that work on those next layers. Again, it's just releasing the pigment for me. I don't know if this has gone too damp over here. Oh no, it's still fine, it's not dry yet. Do exactly the same over here. No pressure. Just letting the paper and the dampness grab that pigment. This is probably the best that this has actually ever worked. I think it is literally because it's so cold in my studio today. I've literally only come in here to do this, so the heater hasn't managed to get up to full temperature. And this is perfect. In the summer, you might have to do this if you want to try and get your use this method. You might have to add your water in stages, so do your ear, and literally it will be drying in front of your eyes if it's too warm. So do your ear and then do this little stage, and then do the break it down into sections. That is the best way. I'm quite thankful today decided to do this little video and it is working so well. Just keep an eye on your fur directions. Touches in here if it'll allow me. See, this is starting to dry a little bit too much. It's allowing me to do a little bit. And come in here as well, just, if you want to use your finger just to blend a little bit, you can. There's no rules. Whatever you need to do to get that effect. It needs to be more grey in here. I tell you what I will do. Just grab my cinnamon. Let's see if I can do the same here, if it'll release. There we go, let's get that cinnamon in there. That I just done the same thing. A little bit grainy. Up there. And my ivory, if I can find my ivory quickly. Where are you? There we go, my stub of my ivory. A little wiggle, let it start to release. I can see it starting to dry now quite quickly. So I'll lose this opportunity soon. I'll keep going whilst I can. There we go. And I think then I just will drop the camera down again. I'll do a little bit along here, so I'm going to use the flat edge of the nib. Quite damp here still. But just going to soften some of this in around here. That is so much better. But like I said at the beginning, this is all about practice. You'll get used to knowing how much pigment to put down on that initial application. And it just comes with experience. You might nail it straight away, but again, the weather, let's say that, the temperature, all that can affect how this works. I'm going to do a little bit down through here just to soften some of this. Just want to lose all of that real grainy, pretty much is where I can see pencil strokes as well that I really don't like the look of. And that has just really broken it up. And it's perfect for this dog as well, because I ummed and ahed what medium to create this dog in. I was almost tempted to do the whole thing in pastel pencils, but then I thought, no, it's got such beautiful underlying colours. I think I'm going to go, use the watercolour pencils. Combined with some pan pastels to add a little bit more softness, but this is a great way of getting the colour into the undertones. Lovely. I think this is too dry now, but I will just attempt to get... Yeah, it's gone too dry. Nice little bit of dampness down around here still, so I'm just going in there whilst I can. And I think we are pretty much there now. That just needs cream rather than, just get that nibby end, cream, or sorry, the ivory rather than a white in here. And one last thing, complete opposite, we've lost a little bit of our dark here, so if I can just come in and intensify that a little bit, I'll take advantage of that now as well. And again, look, hardly any pressure where I'm holding it. Gentle little wiggles, that's my technical term for this, little wiggle. So I'm fiddling now, I can see where I've got little bits of dampness, and I'm just going in there and just taking advantage of them a little bit. And as I come up here, it's getting a little bit too dry, because this is where we initially started, so that is starting to dry out now. Yep, you might go in just a touch with the dark indigo. Is that the dark indigo? That's the Payne's Grey, dark indigo, and that one is nice and blunt. Just in here. Just up through here as well. I'm just going to use my finger there just to blend and soften that as well. Fab. Right, I'm going to leave this one just there. Just pan back up for you. Steadily. And zoom out. There we go. We should have the whole dog in place there. Okay, thank you very much for watching. So if you do want to see all of the making of this dog, the videos will be up on my Patreon as an informal tutorial just to follow along with. And I hope you've enjoyed watching this. And if you have, please hit the subscribe button just down on the bottom right hand side if you're on YouTube. Okay, thank you very much for watching.